Assalamualikum OyaRahmatullahe OyaBarakatuhu. Welcome to my virtual classroom, MKA CLASSROOM. Now let's start today's video tutorial. Liquidity ratios. Liquidity ratios are also termed as short-term solvency ratio. The term liquidity means the extent of quick convertibility of assets into money for paying obligations of short-term nature. So here liquidity ratios, that is the short-term solvency ratio. It has the convertibility power of assets into cash or money. Why? To pay short-term obligations or short-term nature. Accordingly, liquidity ratios are useful in obtaining an indication of a firm's ability to meet its current liabilities, but it does not reveal how effectively the cash resources can be managed. To measure the liquidity of a firm, the following ratios are commonly used: current ratio, quick ratio, and absolute liquid ratio or cash position ratio. Quick ratio, another name acid test ratio. Now we will try to discuss these liquidity ratios. First of all, we will try to start from current ratios. Current ratio establishes the relationship between current asset and current liabilities. It attempts to measure the ability of a firm to meet its current obligations. Measure the ability of a firm to meet its current obligations. The formula for current ratio is current asset divided by current liabilities. The two basic components of this ratio are current asset and current liabilities. Current assets normally means assets which can be easily converted into cash within a year's time. On the other hand, current liabilities represents those liabilities which are payable within a year. So here has the chart of current assets and current liabilities. These are the current assets: cash in hand, cash at bank, sundry debtors, bills receivables, marketable securities, short-term investment, inventories, a stock of raw materials, a stock of work in process, a stock of finished goods. And these are the current liabilities: sundry creditors, accounts payable, bills payable, outstanding and accrued expenses, income tax payable, short-term advances, unpaid or unclaimed dividend, bank overdraft. These are the components of current assets and current liabilities. We have the components of current assets and current liabilities. The interpretation of current ratio, the ideal current ratio 2:1. That means if the current liabilities has 1 unit, then there should be current assets should be in 2 unit. That means that is the 2:1. It indicates that current assets double the current liabilities is considered to be satisfactory. Higher value of current ratio indicates more liquid of firm's ability to pay its current obligations in time. On the other hand, a low value of current ratio means that the firm may find it difficult to pay its current ratio as One-off is generally recognized as the preference among ratios. Advantage of current ratios and disadvantage of current ratios, you know it better. So here as an examples how we can calculate the current ratio. As the following examples of 2003, calculate the current ratio, current assets 5 lakh and current liabilities 2 lakh. If we divide current liabilities divided by current assets 2 lakh divided by 5 lakh, then we will get the current ratio 2.5. Current asset divided by current liabilities, and the formula is for current ratio, current asset divided by current liabilities. So if the current asset is 5 lakh, then the current asset is current liabilities is 2 lakh. Current asset 5 lakh, current liabilities 2 lakh, then the result is 2.5:1. That means the current ratio of 2.5 means the current assets are 2.5 times of current liabilities. So that is its means. Now we will see examples of 2. Our illustration 2, calculate current ratio from the following informations. Here sundry creditors, bills payable, dividend payable, accrued expenses, short term advances, share capital, debentures, inventory, sundry debtors, cash at bank, bills receivables, prepaid expenses, machinery, plant, land and building. So from this here you have to find out which are the current assets and which are the current liabilities. Then it is easy for you to calculate the current ratio. So from this table we can easily calculate our current asset, inventory, sundry debtors, cash in hand, bills receivables and prepaid expenses. These are the long term asset. In the same way we have to calculate the current liabilities, sundry creditors, bills payables, dividend payables, accrued expenses, short term advances. These are the current liabilities, and share capital and debentures are the long term liabilities. So these are not should be include our calculations. Then if we do this current asset divided by current liabilities, then our result 2.24:1. That means this firm has 2.24 times greater than of its current liabilities. After that we will try to start quick ratio or acid test ratio. Quick ratio, also termed as acid test or liquid ratio, it is supplementary to the current ratio. The acid test ratio is a more sharp and strained test of a firm's ability to pay its short-term obligations as and when they become due. Quick ratio establish the relationship between the quick assets and current liabilities. In order to compute this ratio, the below presented formula is used. Liquid ratio, current asset minus stock and prepaid expenses divided by current liabilities. So here is the liquid asset. How can we get the liquid asset? Liquid asset can be calculated by current asset minus inventories and prepaid expenses. So here liquid asset or quick asset, current asset minus inventories and prepaid expenses, then you can get quick assets. Stock and prepaid expenses. Stock means inventories and prepaid expenses, then you can get the liquid ratio. The ideal quick ratio is 1:1 is considered as the satisfactory. High acid test ratio is an indication that the firm has relatively better position to meet its current obligations in time. On the other hand, a low value of quick ratio exhibiting that the firm's liquid position is not good. Here are several advantages and disadvantages you can know. So we will turn to the illustration number 3. Examples 3. You have to calculate the quick ratio. Here is the data: current asset, current liabilities, inventories, prepaid expenses, land and building, share capital, goodwill, etc., etc. Then we have to calculate the quick ratio. So we know the quick asset, current asset minus inventories plus prepaid expenses. So here we will see the current asset. See, this is the current asset minus inventories. Inventories is struck 25,000 and prepaid expenses is 25,000 divided by current liabilities. Here is the current liabilities. So you can easily calculate the quick ratio. Here is the quick ratio, 1.75. What does it mean? Quick ratio, that means this firm has a good capacity to meet its current obligations. That means 1.7 times asset to meet its obligations, current obligations. After that we will see absolute liquid ratio. Our point is absolute liquid ratio. Absolute liquid ratio is also called the cash position ratio or overdue liability ratio. This ratio establishes the relationship between absolute liquid assets and current liabilities. Absolute liquid assets include cash in hand, cash at bank, and marketable securities or temporary investments. The optimum value of this ratio should be 1:2. It indicates that 50% worth absolute liquid assets are considered adequate to pay 100% worth of current liabilities in time. If the ratio is relatively lower than the one, it represents that a company's day-to-day cash management is poor. So you have to remember that if the value of absolute current ratio is less than 1, it is means that the management is poor, day-to-day cash management is poor. If the ratio is considerably more than 1, the absolute liquid ratio represents enough funds in the form of cash to meet its short-term obligations in time. The absolute liquid ratio can be calculated in this form: absolute liquid asset divided by current liabilities. Now you have to find out what does mean the absolute liquid asset. So these are the form of absolute liquid asset: cash in hand, cash at bank, and marketable securities. These things can create the absolute liquid asset: cash in hand plus cash at bank plus marketable securities. These three things can create absolute liquid asset divided by current liabilities. So here you will see here is the list of liabilities: bills payable, sundry creditors, shares capital, debenture, bank overdraft. Here is the long-term assets: goodwill, land, buildings, inventories, these goodwill, land buildings are long-term assets. Inventories, cash in hand, cash at banks, sundry debtors, bills, payables, marketable securities are treated as current assets. Between the current assets, current cash in hand 30,000, cash at bank 20,000, and marketable securities 10,000 treated as most liquid asset or absolute liquid asset. After that, current liabilities. How can we get the current liabilities? Bills payable, sundry creditors, and bank overdraft. Share capital and debentures are long-term capital. So if we divide these things, then we can get our absolute liquid ratio 0.8. It means the ratio 0.8 is quite satisfactory because it much higher than the optimum value of 50%. That means 50%, optimum value of 50%. That means you have to more than 50% absolute liquid assets in your firm to meet up your obligations, so current obligations. So here is the another problems. Then you have to calculate it. Here is the current ratio, liquid ratio, and absolute liquid ratio. From this problem you have to calculate this problem. So I am not going to discuss it because already we have learned current ratio, liquid ratio, and absolute liquid ratio. Then example 6 or illustration 6, here also we have to calculate current asset, current liabilities, liquid asset, and stocks. And already we have learned the current ratio, quick ratio, absolute ratio. We have learned this matter. So from use this formula, then it is easy for us to calculate current asset, current liabilities in this way. Then here is the solutions you will see. Then you have to practice in this problem. This all about today. Stay home, stay safe. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuhu.